The spoon slipped from her tiny hand and clattered on the restaurant floor, but nobody at her table seemed to notice. The man beside her didn't look like a father, though he kept calling her kiddo in a voice that didn't sound kind. His smile was tight, the kind adults were when they're pretending for other people. Across the booth, the woman with him kept checking her phone, not once glancing at the little girl. The girl's name was Lily, only 7 years old, and her heart beat faster with every minute that passed. She didn't know where she was. The man had picked her up from the park an hour ago, said her mom was waiting for her at the restaurant. But her mom wasn't there. Her mom would never have sent this man. She sat still, staring at the red ketchup bottle on the table, trying to remember everything her mother had taught her if she ever felt unsafe. Don't run unless you know where to go. Don't scream unless someone will hear. Look for helpers. Look for people who can help you. She took a deep breath and scanned the restaurant. There were families laughing, a group of teenagers taking photos, and near the window, a group of bikers in black jackets, their helmets resting on the table beside them. They were loud, but they were smiling, and the waitress laughed every time they spoke. They looked kind. The man beside her noticed her looking and snapped his fingers near her face. Eat, he ordered quietly, his smile never fading for the people watching. Your mom's gonna meet us soon. Lily picked up her fork and nodded, her throat dry. She looked down at her plate, and that's when she saw it, the napkin dispenser. Her fingers trembled as she pulled one out. When the man wasn't looking, she grabbed the crayon from her pocket that she always carried, the one shaped like a little pink heart. Her mom had given it to her that morning, before she left to play at the park. Always keep it, okay? Just in case. Lily pressed it to the napkin and started writing, tiny letters shaking across the paper. Help me. Not my dad. She folded the napkin quickly and waited for the waitress to pass. Her hands were sweaty, her heart racing so fast she thought everyone could hear it. The waitress smiled at her as she reached for their empty plates. Lily gave her the napkin with both hands, pretending to wipe her mouth with another. Their eyes met for half a second, long enough for the waitress to see the fear. The woman unfolded the napkin as she walked away, froze when she read it, then looked back at the table. The man was still talking, still pretending to be calm. The waitress didn't hesitate. She turned toward the bikers by the window and whispered something to the tallest one, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his chin and kind eyes. His name was Cole, leader of a local motorcycle club known for helping at the community center. He looked at the napkin, then at the girl, then at the man sitting beside her. His expression changed instantly. He leaned across the table to his friends. She's in trouble, he said under his breath. The others turned, eyes sharpening. Without another word, they stood up. Lily glanced up just in time to see the group of bikers walking toward the exit, pretending to laugh as they left. The man didn't notice, too busy pretending to pay the bill. But when they stepped outside, Cole positioned himself where he could see through the restaurant window. He saw the man grab Lily's wrist a little too hard, pulling her toward the door. Cole spoke into his phone quickly, his voice low. Call the cops. Now. Tell them we got a child abduction in progress. Highway Diner, West Side. Then he nodded to his crew. We follow. When Lily and the man stepped out, the sky was dimming. She spotted the bikes parked along the curb, their chrome catching the streetlights. The man didn't notice the bikers mounting up behind them as he dragged her toward a black car. She looked up once more and saw Cole watching her. He lifted 2 fingers to his eyes, then pointed toward her. A signal. We see you. You're not alone. The man pushed her into the back seat and started the engine, but before the car even left the parking lot, the deep rumble of motorcycle engines filled the air. He checked the mirror and cursed under his breath. What now? He muttered, pressing harder on the gas. The bikers followed close, weaving behind him like a wall of steel and thunder. Lily pressed her hands against the window, tears filling her eyes. She didn't know exactly what was happening, but she knew one thing. Someone was coming for her. Traffic slowed at the next intersection, and that's when Cole made his move. He pulled up beside the car, knocking on the driver's window with his gloved hand. Pull over, he barked. The man panicked, swerving into the next lane. Cole motioned to his crew, and 2 bikes cut him off from the front while another boxed him in from behind. The man slammed the brakes and cursed, shouting, You're crazy. Cole stepped off his bike before the car even stopped moving and pulled the door open. Yeah, he said, his voice calm but cold. Crazy enough to not let you take that kid anywhere. The man reached for something under his seat, but before he could move, Sirens wailed in the distance. Police cars appeared at both ends of the street, lights flashing. The man froze, knowing he was cornered. He tried to run, but two officers tackled him before he could take a step. Cole turned to the back seat, where Lily sat shaking. He opened the door gently and crouched beside her. "You did good, kid," he said quietly. "You're safe now." She looked at him, her small voice trembling. "How did you know?" He smiled, pointing to the pink heart crayon still in her hand. "Because you asked the right way." Later that night, as police took her statement, Lily's mother arrived, tears streaming down her face as she ran to her daughter. Cole stood back, watching the reunion from a distance. The officer beside him said, "If your boys hadn't followed, that man would have been gone before we even got the call." Cole shrugged. "Kids are supposed to be safe, officer. That's all." When Lily turned and saw him by his bike, she ran up to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. He ruffled her hair gently. "You're the brave one, not me." She smiled and handed him the crayon. "Keep it, so you don't forget me." He took it, his rough fingers closing around the small pink heart. "Not a chance, kid." Then he looked at the horizon where the sirens were fading and said quietly, "Not a chance." 2 days later, the small diner on the west side was busier than ever. People came not just for the food, but to see where it had happened, the story everyone was talking about. The little girl who had been saved by a gang of bikers after sending a silent cry for help. News reporters had filled the place for 2 days straight, interviewing anyone who might have seen the moment Lily had slipped that napkin to the waitress. The woman, whose name was Nancy, had been working there for 15 years and had seen hundreds of customers, but she said she would never forget the look in that little girl's eyes. It wasn't just fear, Nancy told the camera crew. It was a message, like she already knew what she had to do. Outside, the sound of engines rolled in again, and the crowd turned toward the window as the same group of bikers pulled up. This time, they weren't there for a rescue. They were there for breakfast. Cole took off his helmet, the sunlight catching the scar on his chin, and walked through the door. The customers parted silently, a mix of awe and gratitude following him to the counter. Nancy smiled and poured him coffee before he even asked. "On the house," she said. "You're the reason that girl's home tonight." Cole smiled faintly but shook his head. "The girl saved herself," he said. "We just followed her lead." His friends laughed quietly, but behind his easy tone, there was something else, something heavier. Because even though Lily was safe, the man who had taken her wasn't the only one. The police had told him that night that the suspect was part of a larger ring, a group that had been using fake family claims to move children across the state. The case had been buried for years, but Lily's courage had pulled it back into the light. And now, Cole couldn't stop thinking about how many more kids were still waiting for someone to see their signal. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Detective Ruiz, the officer who had worked the case. "We found another child. Same pattern. Thought you'd want to know." Cole stared at the message for a long time, then slipped the phone back into his pocket. He looked at the pink heart crayon still tucked inside his jacket, the one Lily had given him. He tapped it twice, as if it could hear him, and muttered, "Guess we're not done yet, kid." That evening, he drove out to the edge of the city where the police had found the new child. The scene was taped off, patrol cars flashing blue and red against the trees. Ruiz met him near the road, looking tired but relieved. "She's safe," he said. 7 years old. Same trick. Someone tried to claim her as a relative. We stopped him just in time." Cole crossed his arms. "Same group." Ruiz nodded. "Looks like it. But we can't track who's funding them. They're too careful." Cole watched as the little girl, wrapped in a blanket, sat in the back of a police car, staring blankly at the night sky. He didn't say anything for a while, just studied her quiet face. "She doesn't even know she's safe yet," he said softly. Ruiz nodded. "Takes a while for some of them to believe it." When Cole left, he didn't go home. He drove straight to the clubhouse where his crew was waiting, engines cooling, coffee cups in their hands. They looked up when he entered. "It's not over," he said simply. "There's more of them. And I'm not sitting still while kids are being dragged off streets like trash." One of the men leaned back in his chair. "You're talking about going after a trafficking ring, boss. That's not our fight." Cole's voice hardened. "Then whose fight is it? We've spent years calling ourselves a brotherhood. Maybe it's time we start protecting more than each other." By morning, every man in his club had agreed. They didn't wear badges, but they had bikes, contacts, and a name the streets respected. Over the next few weeks, they began working quietly with Ruiz, helping gather information from people who wouldn't talk to the police. They rode through alleys, truck stops, and gas stations, following whispers of missing children and fake guardianships. Each night, Cole carried that pink crayon in his pocket like a promise, a reminder of the reason they'd started. Meanwhile, Lily was settling back into her life, though she still slept with the lights on. Her mother tried to keep things normal: school, homework, bedtime stories. But sometimes she caught Lily staring at her crayon box, touching the spot where one was missing. When her mother asked what she was thinking, she said quietly, "I just hope he's okay." Weeks later, there was a knock on their door. When her mother opened it, she gasped. Standing there was Cole, holding a small gift bag. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," he said with a sheepish grin. "I was in the neighborhood." Lily ran forward, smiling wide. "You came back." He laughed, crouching down to her level. "Couldn't stay away. Got you something." She opened the bag and pulled out a shiny keychain shaped like a motorcycle, painted pink with a tiny heart on the side. She giggled. "It looks like my crayon." He nodded. "That's the idea. So you always remember you're braver than you think." She hugged him tightly, and for a moment, all the noise of the city faded away. When he stood to leave, her mother thanked him again, but he just shook his head. "Thank her," he said, nodding to Lily. "She's the reason a lot of other kids are going home." That night, as he rode through the quiet streets, he saw something in the window of a small restaurant. A young girl sitting with her family, waving at him as he passed. He smiled to himself, lifted 2 fingers in salute, and disappeared into the traffic lights ahead. A few months passed, and the story of Lily and the bikers faded from the headlines, but it didn't fade from the city. In every diner, park, and school hallway, whispers still circled about the little girl who had saved herself with a napkin and a pink crayon. Parents taught their children the signal she'd given. Waitresses kept an extra eye on quiet tables, and the biker club that had rescued her became something more than a rumor. They became protectors, silent, unseen, and everywhere. Cole had changed too. He still led his crew, but the late-night rides and small-town brawls had turned into coordinated patrols and quiet missions. They called themselves the Guardian Route, and though it sounded like a name someone made up for a movie, the work they did was very real. Their bikes were no longer symbols of rebellion. They were warnings to anyone who thought fear was power. It was near midnight when Cole pulled up to a gas station on the outskirts of the city, tired from a long ride. The place was empty except for a young man sweeping near the pumps and a woman inside counting cash at the counter. He filled his tank, nodding to the kid, when his phone buzzed with a message from Ruiz. "Need you at the East Rail Yard. Might be connected to the others." Cole's jaw tightened. He finished fueling, started his engine, and took off, the sound of his bike shattering the quiet night. By the time he reached the rail yard, police lights were already flashing in the distance. He parked behind a cargo container and approached Ruiz, who was leaning against his car. "They were trying to move 2 kids through here," Ruiz said quietly. "We caught them before the train left. Same symbol on their van. The network's still active." Cole nodded, scanning the scene. The 2 children, both no older than 8, sat wrapped in blankets, sipping juice boxes the officers had given them. Their faces were pale but calm. Cole crouched beside them. "You're safe now," he said softly. The younger one looked up at him, eyes wide. "Are you the man from the TV? The bike man?" Cole smiled. "Something like that." The boy hesitated, then whispered, "She told us about you." Cole frowned. "Who?" The child's voice was barely a whisper. "The girl with the pink crayon. She said if we were ever scared, to look for people who look brave." Cole's chest tightened. He stood slowly, looking toward Ruiz. "They're talking about Lily," he said. Ruiz nodded. "Her mom's been helping the awareness program, teaching kids the signal. Guess it's working." Cole exhaled a quiet laugh. "Yeah, it's working." When he rode home that night, the streets were empty, the city asleep under a sky full of stars. He stopped at a red light and stared at the reflection of his bike in a shop window. For the first time in years, he didn't see a rough man with a scar and a past. He saw someone who had finally found his reason to keep going. The light turned green, but he didn't move right away. He just sat there, thinking about the little girl who had written "Help me, not my dad," and about how her courage had built something larger than either of them could have imagined. The next morning, Cole visited Lily's school. Her mother had called the night before, saying Lily had something important to show him. When he arrived, he found the classroom buzzing with excitement. On the whiteboard were drawings of motorcycles, hearts, and tiny napkins with words like "be brave" and "find help." The teacher smiled. "We've been learning about safe signals," she said. Lily wanted to teach her friends. Lily ran up to him, grinning. "Look, I told everyone what I did, and now we all know what to do if someone feels scared." Cole knelt down and looked at her proudly. "You're teaching them to be brave," he said. She nodded, eyes shining. "You taught me first." As he walked out of the classroom, he passed a bulletin board filled with photos of children who had been rescued in the past few months. At the center was a picture of Lily, holding a napkin with a pink heart drawn on it. Underneath were the words written in her handwriting. "Brave doesn't mean big. It means trying when you're scared." Cole stopped, staring at it for a long time. Something in his chest shifted, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He pulled out the same crayon from his jacket pocket, still perfectly intact, and smiled to himself. Outside, the rumble of his crew's bikes echoed down the street, and he slipped the crayon back into his pocket. "All right, kid," he muttered. "Let's keep the world safe." That evening, the sun dipped low as he and his crew rode through the city, the golden light bouncing off their helmets. At every intersection, people turned to watch them pass, not in fear, but in trust. They weren't outlaws anymore. They were guardians born from a single act of courage inside a quiet restaurant. And somewhere, at a window glowing softly with the last light of day, Lily waved as the bikes thundered past. Cole lifted 2 fingers in return, a silent promise that the signal would always be seen, that no cry for help would ever go unanswered again. A year later, the story of the little girl with the pink crayon had become something of a legend. Schools told it to remind children that courage could fit in a tiny hand. Waitresses still kept stacks of napkins close, and every biker who rode under the name Guardian Route carried a small pink heart painted somewhere on his gear. Cole never asked them to do it. They all just did. It had become their quiet oath. The city had changed. Streets that once felt dangerous now breathed differently. People were watching out for each other. Every diner, gas station, and roadside cafe had a hotline number taped by the counter. It was strange, Cole thought, how something that had started with one scared child had turned into a movement. He was sitting outside the same diner where it had all begun, watching the morning traffic. The owner, Nancy, brought him his usual coffee. "It's still hard to believe," she said softly. "A year ago, I didn't even know what to do with that napkin. Now look at us." Cole smiled faintly. "You did exactly what you had to. You saw her." A few minutes later, a young woman approached the counter. She was nervous, holding a small bag against her chest. Cole didn't recognize her at first, but then she smiled, and he saw her. The same brave eyes from that night. Older now, but just as full of light. "Lily," he said, standing up. She grinned. "Hi." She was taller, her hair longer, but she still had the same way of speaking, soft, certain. She set the bag on the table. "Mom said you'd be here today. We made something for you." Inside was a leather patch shaped like a heart, stitched in pink thread, the word Guardian burned into it. "So you remember us," she said. He looked at it for a long time, his throat tight. "Kid," he said quietly, "I couldn't forget you if I tried." She laughed. "I'm not a kid anymore. I'm helping my mom at the center. We teach kids what to do if they're scared, just like you taught me." Cole nodded slowly. "You're saving more lives than you know." A sudden roar of engines rolled down the street. His crew was arriving. They waved when they saw her, most of them still wearing patches marked with pink hearts. Lily's eyes widened as she watched them park in a perfect line. "They look like superheroes," she whispered. Cole chuckled. "Sometimes they act like it too." Nancy stepped out from the diner, wiping her hands. "You two want a picture? Something to remember this by." Cole hesitated, but Lily grabbed his sleeve. "Come on. One picture." They stood by his bike as Nancy snapped the photo, the morning sun lighting their faces. When Lily left, she gave him a quick hug. "You always said brave doesn't mean big," she murmured. "You were right." After she was gone, Cole sat there for a long time, staring at the photo on his phone. It felt like the end of something, and the beginning of something else. He had spent his life chasing adrenaline and respect, but what stayed with him wasn't the speed or the fights. It was the sound of a child's voice whispering thank you. Weeks later, Ruiz called him with news. "We got them," the detective said. "The last of the group. Every name off the board. It's done." Cole didn't say anything for a moment. Then he asked quietly, "Any kids left behind?" Ruiz smiled. "All safe. You did it, Cole." He hung up and just sat there, the hum of silence louder than any engine. That night, he rode out to the edge of the city where the highway met the horizon. The air was cool, the kind of stillness that made everything feel clean. He stopped his bike, killed the engine, and stood looking at the stars. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out the pink heart crayon, faded now, the tip worn down. He held it in his palm and whispered, "We did it, kid." Then he placed it inside a small tin box, sealed it, and buried it near the guardrail overlooking the valley. He climbed back on his bike, took a deep breath, and looked at the empty road ahead. The world still had darkness, he knew that. But somewhere out there were children who now knew what to do if they were scared, waitresses who knew how to read fear, and strangers who would never ignore a small signal again. As he started the engine, the sound echoed through the hills, strong and steady. He rode off into the distance, the wind against his face, the stars blurring into streaks of light. In the reflection of his mirror, the city lights twinkled behind him like tiny pink hearts scattered across the night. If this story made you smile, share it with someone who needs a reminder that accidents can turn into beautiful beginnings.